Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and if you've been watching this saga unfold on my MacBook Pro buying experience, you know that I myself had a hard time deciding between the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. Well, after a week of using both of these laptops, I have some thoughts on why you should actually pick the 16-inch model over the 14-inch model. And before you 14-inch fans go crazy at this notion, don't worry because I'm planning on making a video on why you should pick the 14-inch MacBook Pro over the 16-inch as well, because there are valid reasons to go for either model. But let's talk about this 16-inch one, because there is a lot going on with this. So first of all, let's talk about the display. I've been working on both the 14 and 16-inch laptops all week, changing back and forth between both form factors, and I have to say that the 16-inch display is just so beautiful. That extra 2 inches of screen real estate really does add up, and that strength is apparent in multiple areas, like juggling between multiple windows, having more space for my timeline, color grading tools, and searching for clips in Final Cut Pro, editing thumbnails in Affinity Photo, and even just watching video on this big display, especially with the new mini LED display technology, is just jaw-droppingly beautiful, especially with HDR content. And let's not also forget that it comes with the ProMotion display, which can go up to 120 Hz depending on the content. And although there is actually a lot of unoptimized apps right now in macOS, I still notice the smoothness in a lot of areas when navigating the system UI, and for editing videos in Final Cut, I think it just creates a super smooth experience. Now yes, the 14 and 16-inch both have mini LED displays, but the size of the 16-inch just immerses you so much more in the viewing experience. That better viewing experience also comes with a better listening experience. Now yes, the 14-inch MacBook Pro technically has the same speaker setup, and in my head, it was very close to the 16-inch MacBook Pro speakers, but ultimately in my test, I said the sound was just a little bit richer on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And since that video has came out, we have learned through a detailed teardown between both of these laptops that my ears weren't wrong, and the 16-inch MacBook Pro does in fact have a bigger speaker system than the 14-inch model, and these things can really fill a room with sound. In fact, I've actually been using my MacBook Pro as a little portable HomePod speaker because of the new ability to AirPlay content to it in macOS Monterey, and you could just kinda sit the MacBook Pro down, AirPlay music to it, and any other existing HomePods or AirPlay speakers you have around, and you get this really compelling and good multi-room audio experience. Now, this reason for speaker improvements isn't just to spite the 14-inch model, it's because the 16-inch MacBook Pro is just a bigger size. It gives more room to put in bigger speakers, and it also gives more room for a few other things as well. Most notably, most users will appreciate the increased battery life on the 16-inch model, which Apple rates at 21 hours of video playback compared to 17 hours. For the 14-inch model, and 14 hours of wireless web compared to 11 hours on the 14-inch model. And while I'm still testing the battery thoroughly on both models, based on my testing so far, I am noticing anywhere from a 2 to 4 hour increase in battery life depending on the task that I'm doing between the 14 and 16-inch model. That is a big increase, and it is the best battery life I have ever tested in a MacBook. The best battery life I have ever tested in a laptop, to be frank. Now, you might think with all these extra goodies and components, and that this increase in size over the 14-inch model for better speakers and a bigger battery would result in something that is too cumbersome to fit in a smaller bag. And while there's definitely a weakness to the 16-inch model being one of the heaviest MacBooks in recent memory, there is a silver lining because the form factor is actually a hair bit smaller than the old 16-inch Intel model, meaning that I can actually fit this laptop into one of my smaller messenger bags. It barely fits, like it just squeezes in there, but having it just be a little bit smaller in footprint makes it a little bit more portable, even though it weighs more. Like, it's easier to fit in a bag, but you're gonna be carrying that heft with you. But again, that increase in weight and size just leads to more benefits for the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and increased benefits in other areas. So while the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro can be spec'd up to exactly the same max configuration, based on my testing, it does seem that the 16-inch Max is able to eke out some extra performance, perhaps due to the thermal design of the 16-inch having not only bigger fans, but also a bigger heat pipe to cool off the internals of the computer. I really think you'll only see this benefit if you opt to go for the Max chip model of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and this is where I have seen a small performance discrepancy between the 14-inch Max that I have and the 16-inch Max model from other users. On top of that, the 16-inch model has also an exclusive high power mode where it prioritizes loud fan noise and less battery life to eke out every last bit of performance possible on that machine. And unfortunately, that extra toggle is just not an option on the smaller 14-inch Max version. Now, while you may not see a performance difference if you're opting to go for the M1 Pro version of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, you will still get some benefits from that better thermal architecture. In fact, in a Max Tech video where they benchmarked this laptop, it seems that the main benefit of the better thermal design usually didn't result in better performance, but actually resulted in lower operating temperatures and, probably more importantly, lower fan noise during intensive tasks. So if you want to make sure that your laptop is as cool and as silent as possible under every single circumstance, no matter what you throw at it, the 16-inch model stands above as the laptop to get. The other consideration you should be making for the 16-inch model is that the price discrepancy between the 14-inch laptop isn't as big as you think. If you're configuring them with the same exact version of the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips, there is only a $200 difference. That's because the 14-inch base model starts with just an 8-core CPU and 14-core GPU, while the 16-inch M1 Pro doesn't have those lower binned M1 Pro configurations and actually starts with a 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU option, where this is a $300 upgrade on the smaller 14-inch MacBook Pro. So again, that real price difference between the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro isn't $500, it's actually just a $200 difference. And when you take into consideration the benefits you're getting on the 16-inch model with the larger display, better speakers, increased battery life, lower fan noise, a better thermal design, and possibly some increased GPU performance on the Max chips, that extra $200, it adds a lot. You get a lot of real-world benefits that makes the 16-inch a stronger option that you should consider. And overall, the 16-inch MacBook Pro feels like a complete workstation that really excels at being your main computer, even without the need for an external display. The 16-inch size just leads itself to increased productivity in apps that need more screen real estate and just more breathing room for the amount of apps you can have open on screen. And while you'll have to deal with a bit of increased weight and thickness, this is the best MacBook Pro feature-wise, with all of the benefits packed into this package. All right, everyone, and that is why I think you should choose the 16-inch MacBook Pro over the 14-inch model. But again, don't worry, if you're leaning towards the 14-inch model, there will be a video up very soon explaining all the benefits of the 14-inch model. So if you want to see that video, make sure you don't miss it by subscribing to the channel. And if you liked this one, show your appreciation by leaving me a like. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. This is where my friend Patrick Tomaso would usually review some VHS tapes. I don't have VHS tapes. I don't have anything interesting here. So, there's this Rene Ritchie mug. You can buy this at Rene Ritchie's merchandise web store. There'll be a link in the description. Why am I advertising other people's merch? It's a good mug. It's a good logo.